The concept of canon within fictional universes is something that is hotly contested as being extremely important to something stupid that fans only care about because they want to have something to obsess over and fight over. For those who don't know, in fan communities, the term canon is often used to refer to the official or accepted elements of a fictional universe, such as characters, events, settings, and storylines. It's very common in Assassin's Creed that many fans debate and analyze what is considered canon within a particular franchise. For example, the Star Wars fandom, probably the most prolific canon whores in the world, have huge discussions about what constitutes canons, and they often revolve around the films, the TV shows, the novels, the comics, and other media produced by Lucasfilms. This especially kind of took a head when Lucasfilm sold to Disney and a bunch of things that were considered canon was suddenly made non-canon and wiped the slate clean. And Star Wars went through a problem that I now think that Assassin's Creed is going through, which is a problem of scale and a problem of quality, or rather consistency. So I want to explore these two problems and kind of discuss why I think Assassin's Creed is facing a problem with its canon and what I personally as a fan am doing about it. But first, before I get into that, I want to say that canon is a very important thing within a fictional universe if you're going to have people invested in your franchise. The reason why is because you want to feel like all of the energy and attention you put into a fictional universe matters, because the universe is consistently rewarding you with in-universe explanations for things that give some sort of reward or payoff for you being invested in these stories. If you're suddenly told that all this work that you put in to be attached to this fictional franchise, all this time that you spent learning about its rules, its stories, its heroes, its villains, suddenly doesn't matter because any story that comes afterwards can immediately contradict it, you're going to feel kind of bitter or sour as a fan. So I'm not saying that canon is not important, but rather that it's a very tricky thing to have in a huge franchise that spans multiple years, because different creative entities that have control over it have different ideas of what they want from that franchise, and you're never going to please anyone. And the more time that you spend creating more lore for the franchise, the more likely the canon is going to make some fans upset. So let's discuss these two problems and why they're affecting Assassin's Creed. Number one is consistency. Consistency refers to the idea that from writer to writer, from game to game, or installment to installment, if we're not talking about Assassin's Creed, you're having a consistent vision, style, and consistent rules when it comes to the lore of a fictional universe. It kind of allows it to maintain its realism, or at least believability, within the certain constraints that this fictional universe is in. This is a problem that Assassin's Creed has really struggled with over the past few years. Just recently in the RPG series, we kind of changed so many rules that we had established for Assassin's Creed that kind of contradict everything else that had come before. For example, the idea of dialogue choices is heavily debated as being against the canon of Assassin's Creed or breaking the canon of Assassin's Creed. But there's other things like the type of animus that Layla is using and what it can do, not needing Layla's specific genetic memories, but rather any sample that you upload. This is kind of like the canon breaking stuff that you can sort of excuse or ignore. And many fans have kind of made a big fuss about these theoretically canon breaking additions to the universe. But in this video, I actually want to talk about what I consider to be worse from an opinionated fan's perspective like mine, which is the canon changing stuff that does not break the universe. It doesn't break the canon. It's just shitty additions that I don't know why they were made in the first place. Now, the biggest contender for this is Assassin's Creed Odyssey. If you're an AC Odyssey fan, more power to you. I wish there was another game in this universe that I could enjoy, and I think there is a lot of fun to be had in the gameplay, but the overall story at every level in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, even though it doesn't really break the canon all that much, or if it does, it can be reconciled with a bunch of retcons. The choices that it makes for its additions to the Assassin's Creed universe, for me, ruins so much of the canon. The biggest perpetrator of this, and this is a spoiler alert for Assassin's Creed Odyssey if you haven't played it, Cassandra's the canon player, by the way, or the canon kind of character. Cassandra ends up being immortal by the end of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and she lives through every age up until the modern day where she kind of sacrifices herself and gives the staff to Layla. This is technically not canon breaking. It created a piece of Eden that allows the cells of a human being to regenerate and grants immortality. That's within the scope of Assassin's Creed lore, because you know that you have the Isu and you know that you have incredibly advanced technological artifacts that are so beyond understanding that it can almost seem as magic. The artistic or directional choice to make a character that is so goofy, that is so vacuous in terms of its writing, because half of the time Cassandra has a very direct and objective personality, and the other half you can make decisions for her that can very easily contradict her personality, meaning that she's not even a character but more of a contradictory vessel for a narrative, and not only making her consequential to the events of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which would keep this kind of like really bad writing self-contained, but rather implying that she was alive during Assassin's Creed 1, during Assassin's Creed 2, or AC Unity, is something that really affects the canon for me, at least from an Assassin's Creed fan's perspective. Because Assassin's Creed 1, stylistically, tonally, and in terms of its narrative depth, is so much more different and, in my opinion, better than Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And playing Assassin's Creed 1, running around these kind of grounded environments, recreating these historical events, and in the back of my mind now now thinking Cassandra was running around with a fucking staff, swearing and making jokes this entire time, kind of breaks immersion and kind of breaks canon. And this is the first problem, the problem of consistency, stylistic consistency in this example. There's a lot of variance between the writers that get to make huge decisions for Assassin's Creed, and there's no real template or rule that you have to follow when you're creating content for Assassin's Creed, which leads to a lot of people who have a different idea of what they want from this franchise, creating hugely impactful changes to the lore that kind of upsets the canon or changes some of the reasons why so many people were into Assassin's Creed. And it's very difficult to sustainably have different writers all have the same vision and taste that they want for the franchise without it retroactively affecting other people's works. I think that the work that Darby McDevitt did and the original team in Assassin's Creed 1 did are kind of undermined by the choice to make a character like Cassandra permeate throughout all of the Assassin's Creed games. And this is the huge first problem that we have with canon, which is stylistic or any other type of consistency that undermines past work. And the second problem with canon is scale, which I kind of touched on before with the canon breaking stuff. But essentially, the larger that a fictional universe gets and the greater the amount of installments that you have, the more difficult it is to maintain good canon, because you're suddenly having to fit the same amount of puzzle pieces into what feels like a more complete puzzle. The stories that you tell have a shorter time frame. The choices that you make have to make sure to align with even the smallest little details across not just video games but comics and books and movies to make sure that nothing contradicts anything or nothing breaks anything. And it has led to a lot of people creating installments for Assassin's Creed, whether it's in the movie that kind of broke the canon or comics or books that constantly contradict or go against other things that have been established. And the more that you create for this, the worse the problem gets, because no one at Ubisoft is creating an omniscient spreadsheet that tracks every single little lore detail of the entire franchise, which means that anyone who's writing for this franchise, unless they've read every book, played every video game, read every comic, and watched the movie and all the other movies, like the smaller ones like Embers and Lineage, you're going to eventually make a decision where someone could point and say, hey, this doesn't make sense with anything else, therefore we have to retcon it to make it make sense. And you run into a kind of ship of Theseus problem. For those who don't know, the ship of Theseus is this philosophical mental exercise where you take a ship, the ship of Theseus, and you say, if you slowly replaced parts of this ship part by part until eventually every single part that composes this ship is not the original wood with which it was made, is it still the same ship? If you replace every little wooden slab and you replace the sails until every single item that makes up that ship is a replacement and is completely new, is it still the same ship? And this is kind of the point that I want to make regarding canon. There are going to be so many retcons and so many soft reboots that eventually you will have to ask yourself, is this the same Assassin's Creed that we knew? Is this the same franchise? Because, for example, to give you a recent example with Assassin's Creed Origins, they made it so that the origins of the Hidden Ones happened during the events of the game. The only problem was that before that, Darius was seen as the first assassin, and he lived in the time of AC Odyssey. So they had to change it to say that, he wasn't really an assassin or a hidden one. He just had a hidden blade and had the same ideology as the Hidden Ones and the assassins, but didn't really form any kind of specific brotherhood like Bayek and I did. This kind of like soft, small retconning, once you pile it up enough and start changing every little aspect about Assassin's Creed, is going to lead to a very inconsistent and unsatisfying canon that is going to make a lot of fans feel kind of disenfranchised or disrespected. And this is the main problem that I see in Assassin's Creed's future, because they just announced a bunch of games and they're all coming out in the next few years. I think one every year or one every 2 years. So the possibility and the probability that this canon is going to ultimately be kind of so different to the original canon that we fell in love with as fans all those years ago is extremely likely. There's no real solution to this problem, especially when you combine it with the other problem of consistency and having all these creative forces that have their own opinions on what Assassin's Creed should be further away from what it actually is or what it actually was. And without any real conscious effort to try and fix this, and even if you did have a conscious effort to fix this, the franchise is getting so big and so old that it's almost impossible to avoid these two problems. So what is the solution? I don't actually know what the solution is. I can tell you what my solution is, and I kind of decided that I was going to go down this route when Assassin's Creed Odyssey came out, and I left the franchise because I didn't want anything to do with this game, and I came back for Assassin's Creed Valhalla and decided that I was going to use this idea of headcanon. For those who don't know, headcanon is essentially, in each person's mind, you can decide for your own self what is canon and what is not. You can just use that to kind of reconcile all the different artistic choices or narrative choices that different people make that you actually disagree with, because at the end of the day, it is all fiction and it is not real. And if you can kind of survive the idea that maybe you won't be able to to relate to other people who believe certain things or do use the main canon as their canon, and kind of build up your own little universe with its own rules and consistent things, and you can kind of take what you liked and leave what you didn't. You're going to have a much more peaceful experience as a fan of any fictional universe. For example, in my head canon, Cassandra is not immortal. Cassandra died after Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and when I play these games, she doesn't exist. That's kind of something that you can do if you're invested into a franchise. It doesn't only have to be Assassin's Creed. It can be any fictional universe in which you're invested in but don't like some of the later choices that people make. You can just create your own headcanon and move from there, especially if they don't make extremely bad choices like putting Cassandra next to Altair in some sort of DLC or anything like that. You can kind of live with it and not be too fussed about it. And again, this is for people who do care about the canon and the lore and are kind of hardcore fans and care about the immersion factor of all these things. If you're interested in seeing more about the idea of immersion factors and different things that can add to that immersion, one of the things that I think was nailed perfectly was the idea of the hidden blade. And even though a lot of people say that it's not a very efficient weapon, I actually think that it is. And if you want to see why, you can watch this video here.